Chiefs did something that you really want to see them repeat, and that is come to town prepared, even if it's a town overseas, so they can get things done. This offense has to take the next step forward in running the ball, in executing what's there and available for them as they get to the second half of their season. Welcome to RGR Football. We appreciate you guys joining us on a Friday. It's Dan Harms and me. I'm Ryan Tracy. This is a fun week because we get to take a step back. Nothing major, nothing to break down every single week, but we have to look forward because the Eagles are coming around. We got the Bengals on the roster. We'll see what happens to them. Looks like Chase is going to play. We'll see if that actually ends up being true. A lot of variables. And from the fantasy aspect, I'm having to retool a couple of things. So what are you going to do? It happens. I really want to get into this, and we appreciate you guys joining us on a Friday. A little bit atypical for us. You'll feel the same. Hope you guys enjoy the chat. We are getting things out of the way here a little bit early and wanted to take care of that. So for me, the big thing this week is setting our expectations. What do we need to see? If I'm in the room, and no offense to anybody watching or to you and me, Dan, we need to act like as though we're in the room and we're laying out what the season goals are down the stretch to hope that we can help Coach Reed keep everything on track. That's kind of the approach that I'm taking on this.
Yeah.
I really want to know, like, what's the number one thing for you? If nothing else can change, you can only get one thing to actually get adopted. What are you recommending to Coach Reed right now?
It's the efficiency in the run game, because the efficiency is what's going to allow your pass game to open up. If you can run the ball effectively, and they've done it at times where Pacheco gets, 5 yards plus a carry, but it's the efficiency of their big gains. They're very sporadic right now, and there aren't very many in the games consistently enough. And when you have that efficiency of the run game, it opens up passing lanes. It just does. If you can create linebackers having to take that extra half step forward, you're creating an extra half step of separation over the middle of the field, or a half step late to a reaction play, to a man coverage play, to a zone drop. That's the big thing here. You're not changing your personnel. You're not doing it. Nothing's happening from here on out. So you got the players that you have, and you have to be able to work with that. And I believe that there are some limitations to their roster construction that I didn't believe there were prior to the season. Obviously, things change as we go forward. Adding the efficiency of the running game that we saw last season near the end of it and into the postseason can help put everything back on track for this offense.
I like that concept, and you know how much I'm going to love the run game. So anytime that's the point going forward, for me on the offensive side, it's even a little bit more simplistic than that. Yeah, do I want to find a rotation of the top 4 receivers and actually feed those guys more rather than this sporadic, chuck and duck kind of concept? For me, it's even more important because I think you need to get more reps in, and I think you need to keep the defenses on their toes in another way. And what we've seen is that the offensive line and Patrick Mahomes have been very, very good when that ball comes out in 2.6 or less.
Yeah.
The quick game, quote unquote. I think it helps your tackles. I think it helps Mahomes. It helps the receivers. And you're going to get more reps because those quick hitters, unless you break off something drastic in yak, you're going to have more pass attempts. You're going to have more receptions. And that's going to help the other aspect of this offense. So for me, it's double down. And outside of the 15, you got to keep that tempo up. Almost to the point where teams are going to want to slow you down at that point. And if that's the direction that the Bengals take or the Buffalo Bills take, and they want to run the ball more, that plays into what you're looking for. So I think overall, I want that tempo, and I want them to just slice and dice. It's got to be more of a scalpel than a home run hitting kind of thing. You know what I mean? I just want the 1,000 cuts that I think will open up everything else. It will give Sky Moore more reps. It will give Rashee Rice more reps. It will hopefully get Pacheco some more reps as well. And that will build towards the offseason. I know Andy Reid has tricks. We'll talk about tricks. But right now, that basis of the tempo of the offense has to be there, I think. Do you think that those two concepts, though, can mesh?
I think that they actually have meshed. They meshed last year. The run game was efficient, and they were throwing the ball out quickly. This was exactly what they did last year. So it's kind of funny how that's how we want to go back to it. It felt like they got away from it this season, in large part because they may have overestimated their wide receiver room and then overestimated some of their offensive line play in the run game. So you have these differing concepts on what they're going to end up doing. The offensive line is different than it was last year. They don't have Andrew Wiley. They don't have Orlando Brown Jr. And you have now 2 other tackles that have left their mark on the run game, if you will. And then you have the wide receivers. They talked about Kadarius Toney being their guy all offseason. They spoke up Sky Moore. Things have gone the other way where Rashee Rice and Justin Watson have kind of been their other two receivers next to MVS who have taken the majority of those trustworthy snaps. And when you have that, you limit what you can do offensively personally. So yes, getting back to the quick stuff. And that's why when we talk about MVS and Justin Watson being on the field at the same time, they can't really run a quick passing game. These guys don't run quick hitting routes. That's not what they do well. And sometimes you see Justin Watson with a little bit of a hitch every now and then, but predominantly he's running deeper cuts down the middle of the field. He's running his corner routes. So what does that mean? Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, maybe a little bit more in terms of the short stuff. So we want to see more concentration of targets, but when you get to the quick passing game, that's where the receivers that are on the field need to be receivers that run some of the short routes. So usage has been a little confounding at times for these players, and hopefully they get this over the bye week sorted out what they want to do with the quick passing game and develop some of these players in a way that uses them properly within the system of the short passes and then efficiency in the run game.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And I know we're all confounded by what isn't happening for Kadarius Toney. That's going to be, I think, a big tick up here. It may not happen the first few weeks, but it's got to start inching forward because obviously I could run him on slants all day long. I certainly have no problem with that. I want to see Rashee Rice do the same thing. You know, the double slant concept is in this offense. They haven't been using it much. And I think that that's something that they need to come back to because you got to get him cooking one way or the other. It doesn't have to be this gadgetry all the time. And I still feel like that's part of where we're going to on the offensive side of the ball. We'll get to the defense in a minute, folks. We don't have as many things to talk about on that side of they're playing well. So it's also got to be like in the play call, like start to banish some of that stuff. The pop passes are still viable, right? We haven't seen the underhand shuffle as much this season. I'm guessing that's probably going to come back. But you got to keep that to like you usually do. It's like the pepper. It's just the very top end of the seasoning, right? It's got to get back to more straightforward bases. And that's on Andy. And the question for me becomes, is it the input? We've talked a lot about the offensive coordinator this season, a lot about who's listening to who and who's actually making play calls. In the end, it's got to be the staff. The staff has to have a more varied game plan every single week, and they got to be able to hit all the corners of the offense straight ahead and with more aggression. I feel like he's been holding back, Andy Reid has, the entire time, just for this part of the season, and particularly when we get to December.
I'm always going to hope so, but we've kind of seen that not be necessarily the case over the course of the last couple of seasons where this is just kind of what it is. And we've, like I said, we talked at length about every single year when there's a problem with the offense. Is it the offensive coordinator? Or is it the head coach? The fact that there's a consistent problem with the offense over the last few seasons and there's only been one guy remaining the same should give you your answer. It's Andy Reid, and Andy Reid's the one calling the plays, and he's kind of getting in there and being a little bit stubborn-headed at times, and that's fine. I got no problems. Again, I'm not going to argue a ton with what Andy Reid has to say because, I mean, he's got 2 Super Bowl rings. He's been to 3, and he's been legitimately one of the greatest coaches of all time. So I think eventually he's going to figure that part out. My entrance, what I'm interested to see going forward from the coaching staff specifically is that their first 15 is very good. Typically, it's very good. Then go back to the Miami game where they just threw the ball down the field quickly. And they were like, man, no big deal. They go score a touchdown. Then the Miami Dolphins adjusted. They started squeezing some of those deeper routes. They started to not let them get as loose downfield in their zone. Then what happened? Oh, passes kind of went away. And then we saw that long drive, right? It felt like they adjusted one more time a little bit. They sprinkled in, Rice and Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney. They ran the ball a little bit there. They were able to get the ball all the way down the field. They score a touchdown with a nice little play to Jerick McKinnon where Travis Kelce, again, he talked on his podcast about how I got to do a better job of getting open. Like that was supposed to be for me. But guess what? When you draw 3 guys, You're not getting the football, Travis.
But
It's not your fault.
everybody's open.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck getting out of 3 guys. Like, I understand you want to be able to do that, but Jerick McKinnon's wide open for a touchdown. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw it over there, and we're gonna see that. So I think that game, there were some things to take away from it, and specifically, I thought some of the receivers, when given the opportunity, showed that they can actually play well in the structure that you use them well in. Sky Moore had a nice little stopper in that cover 2 with down the left sideline. Obviously, Kadarius Toney, 1 target, 1 catch over the middle of the field. I'd like to see them target him down the field a little bit more after the bye. He's been healthy and not on the injury report. I think that's huge. And we might see after the bye them get a little more comfortable with, okay, get a little more heavy-handed with that salt, guys. So sometimes, like when you're cooking a steak, it's a heavy amount of salt, right? You always use a lot of salt because it needs it. Usually salt, pepper. I use salt, pepper, and then we do butter and rosemary in the pan. Some garlic in there too. So we do it that way. So you always hit it with the heavy-handed salt. And right now, Kadarius has been just a little bit, just a little bit. So we want to go ahead and throw a little bit more on there because he's the most dynamic wide receiver that they have. Okay. He just is. And the offense needs dynamicism from the wide receiver position. We got a little bit of unexpected from Rashee Rice, but I want to see more adjustments after the adjustment from the offense. The defenses adjust well to them after they get their first 15 plus in around that number. And then Andy feels like he doesn't adjust as well after. I'd like to see them do that a bit better in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I won't complain. That's for sure. Adjustments are what it's all about. We're going to talk about the defense coming up. And then, what else are you going to do this weekend? I do want to share a little bit of college football watching so you guys can get ready for the draft. Those of you that are here on a Friday afternoon, you know that we always get into it in draft season. So we're going to get to that very, very quickly. But also, got to make some money. And that's the way it comes down for Daily Fantasy Sports. Thank you to our newest sponsor. If you guys haven't gotten in on the action yet, you can still get the new customer offer over at Underdog Fantasy. It's a mystery pick'em special that you're still eligible for, and you get a $100 deposit match when you use our code RGR. So it's the easiest way to get into the action, and we're going to walk you through it because we're going to make our picks today as a group. I always love doing this together, Dan, because you have thoughts more so than I do at times about who's actually ready to put out in fantasy. So let me get those zoomed in and we'll take a look because the game of the week for me is going to be Detroit and the Chargers. We know the Chargers pretty well, so we're going to use that. And I'm always trying to figure out, I always feel that Justin Houston, that's a whole departure. Justin Herbert's always a guy that doesn't quite live up to a lot of the national hype. And I still feel that he's an approaching an elite quarterback. Is he up there with Burrow and Josh Allen? Probably not. But I do think that is a factor of the system and what he's working with. Do you think that I'm crazy?
No, and Justin Herbert has been among the league leaders in just not being able to continuously play with the offense that he's given. Like, there's a problem in Los Angeles with whatever it is with the injury bug. Mike Williams the last 2 years has been hurt. Keenan Allen last year was injured as well. He's been kind of nicked up the last couple of seasons. He's played through a lot of his injuries as well. They just lost Josh Palmer. Mike Williams is done for the season. Their tight ends are getting hurt. They don't have a blocking tight end, so they can't run the ball as effectively as they usually can. And Austin Eckler's dealt with an injury early in the season. When you have that much changing, and on top of it, Justin Herbert here, we're going to give you a new offensive coordinator and have you learn a new system. On top of all of it, and you're going to have new pieces being dropped in because your injuries are all over the place. Happens every single year for the Chargers, and they have to find ways for him to have to overcome that. So yes, I believe he's an ascending, approaching elite quarterback, but he's in an offense that is consistently changing with injuries. And I personally, I'm not sure if Brandon Staley is going to make it through the season. I think he's probably going to get fired at the end of the year because, he can't control injuries, but their defense is also terrible. It's been bad for the majority of the last couple of seasons. So it's tough, but I am with you that Justin Herbert is an approaching elite territory quarterback. Just the landscape in LA changes how he can perform on a consistent basis.
I agree. He's got a matchup that's really interesting this week against your Detroit Lions. Fan of
Say
the
your
your
like
youth,
I'm like
right?
don't say your like they're my team. I'm in here wearing my Chiefs swag
I
shirt
know.
or my Chiefs stuff. Like make me feel like that.
You can't help where you grow up, right? Hey, that's the way it
No,
goes.
you can't.
I still vote for the Bears when the Chiefs aren't playing. So hey, it is what it is. But I didn't need him a whole lot in last week.
Yeah.
That's very true. I think that's very different against the Lions. I think Goff, maybe we'll talk about him in a minute, but I think the emergence of Laporta has certainly helped that. And maybe they're not as hot as they were, but I do think this is going to be a game that Herbert has to put up points in order to get a win. So they have the line set right here at 17.5. And this is how underdog works, folks. They're going to give you that line. You just have to make a choice whether it's higher or lower. We're going to put in anywhere between 3 and 5 entries in that to make our actual wager this week, and that's exactly what we're doing. At the end of the day, I think it's going to be enough of a fight that I want to take the higher on Herbert here at 17, nearly 18 points. When we look at the scoring, it is passing touchdowns are 4. So for those of you that are looking at how this fantasy league works, that is what this pick'em is. Do you think that I'm pushing too far? Is 18 too much to expect from Justin Herbert?
I know. I think also the Lions coming off a bye are going to put some points on that defense, and that's when you have to have a quarterback that can throw the ball late in games. And while I think the Lions defense has played up to snuff this year for the large majority, I think that Justin Herbert offers some things that are difficult to plan against. And I think that at the end of the day, again, Keenan Allen is going to play in this game. He's good to go. I think that they have to hope that Quentin Johnston can get something going. And then their ability to throw the ball to Austin Eckler out of the backfield can really help give them more dynamicism in their passing game. And Herbert's going to have to throw the ball to keep pace because the run defense in Detroit's been better this year than most people expected in general. So, yeah, I think over 18 points makes a lot of sense for Justin Herbert. One, because again, he's going to have to throw the football, and don't sleep on his ability to run inside the 5-yard line. I think he should have an ability to run the ball, which gets you that 6 fantasy points instead of 4 for a passing touchdown. So I think he's live to score a rushing touchdown this week too.
I'm glad you bring that up. I was just thinking that same thing. On the flip side, 12 points for Eckler, and I want to keep it, we can look at the Jacksonville game as well. I don't know. That seems right on the borderline to me that's probably close. So I don't know that I would pick that one this week. What do you think?
He hasn't looked the best, but again, I think they might have to throw him the ball a little more in this game. And it's supposed to, I would imagine it's high scoring coming off a game where you struggled against the Jets, that you might want to try to score more points offensively. And it's a spot to be able to do it. 12, he's going to need a touchdown. Like he's going to need to get a touchdown to get to that number, but he could catch 6-7 passes. So
Yeah.
for me, I'd probably go higher on it myself because I think he's got that still the ability to score a touchdown, but catch those dump offs from Herbert too.
I'm rolling with you. On the flip side, I want to say that Goff's got to keep up with Herbert. Like you said, they're going to come out firing to begin with. I think 17 is pretty simple for him. Do you agree?
Yeah, I'm looking at 17, 14, and 9 from the guys that are listed here, and I'm about to just pick higher on all of them. I think that this legitimately could be a high-scoring affair in this football game, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, too.
I think so, too. Like, I'm looking forward to it. And then we get to the other big matchup that we have our lines for right now, and I, for one, am just having trouble with what's going on in Jacksonville. In terms of fantasy specifically, I think if you're a Jags fan, you're probably happy. But fantasy wise, I've struggled with these guys all season. I've got a number of them on some of my different leagues. Does anyone here have a matchup that you think the line is easily decidable?
Easily? I mean, not really, because with them specifically with the 49ers coming off of a bye, I think that they're going to have figured out some of their defensive struggles. But I do think that Christian Kirk, who has been the kind of the go-to guy for Trevor Lawrence this year, can catch another 6-7 balls in this game over the middle of the field. I'm just wondering, I would imagine they're going to have their all-pro linebacker on George Kittle. I mean, not on George Kittle, on Evan Ingram, which will take away some of the attention from Kirk in the middle of the field. And if it's not him on Kirk, I do think this is an opportunity for him to be able to go after him, because I don't know who's going to play in the slot for him this week. But regardless, Kirk's going to have an ability, one, because they have to get the ball out quickly. Now the addition of Chase Young to that defensive line in San Francisco is a huge thing that they're going to have to deal with. They have Nick Bosa still. They have a lot of guys that can get after the quarterback. Ball's going to have to come out quick, which means the timer's going off. One guy that's going to be open quickly is Christian Kirk. So he's the guy I'm looking at for the hire.
And with Warner paying attention to Ingram, I think that makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. They also are going to run. I think they're going to move it around enough. So I'm confident in your thought there as well. What I'm not confident in, 16 feels a little high coming off of this. I think that they might be able to slow him down a little bit more than that. The pick that I have here, I'm not even sure George Kittle's going to get that level. Lloyd should be playing in this game. I think he can limit him a little bit. So it comes down to me, to Ayuk or Purdy, and these numbers have me leaning towards the wide receiver. What do you see?
Mm-hmm. It would be the wide receiver, because that's 10 points, right? Like that's 10.15 points that I'm looking at. Brandon Ayuk has been pretty much the most efficient receiver in football this year. He catches just about everything that comes his way almost every single game. I mean, Cleveland was a different monster, but he's the guy that you want. And I would personally always hit the higher on Christian McCaffrey because of the way they use him. I think he's defense proof. I don't think that there's any defense that can actually specifically slow him down because of the way they use him as a receiver, but also in their fantastic run game. So I'm always going to be a higher with Christian McCaffrey because he's live to score 20 plus fantasy points every single week. And also Brandon Ayuk is pretty much been one of the best and most efficient receivers in football this year. So more than 10 points for him seems like a slam dunk for me.
Okay, I'm going to take it. I'm going to roll with you. Now, I'm going to switch stuff up. For those of you that want to get into Underdog Fantasy, make sure you use our code RGR. Same thing, and pick your lineup every single week. That helps us, and we want to help you. I'm going to actually make this a little bit more interesting because I'm going to switch over to the insured. This is the difference. Your top payout isn't as big when you run insured, but you can miss one. And we've been very close on a number of our entries lately. So I think that's kind of what I want to do. And my inkling is to put 50 down. And then if you get all of them, you get 500, you get 125, and you get a significant payout on the insured. It's not the payout that the standard is, but do you have an inkling here what you'd like to do?
I like the insured. We haven't done an insured one before, so let's go ahead, because again, it's 500 if you hit all 5 anyway. Like, yeah, I'm all for that. Like, that sounds like a good deal to me.
So we're going to confirm that, and that is our entry. If you guys want to play along, you can get it, and I will get this link and share it for you here in the description as well as over on social media. So don't miss that. Those are our picks of the week on Underdog Fantasy. Use the code RGR if you go over there. You can use the link here and in the description and get yourself into the action as well. I think you guys are going to dig it. But let's get back to the Kansas City Chiefs and what the next portion of the season is going to bring, because there's a lot there. The defense is functioning pretty well. The injury thing to Nick Bolton, I think, is something that we need to, if not address, we need to be aware of. Yeah. And for me, it's about the consistency of all the other role players. Mayhew, I think, has to step it up here, because I think you're going to see teams continue to take the action of, we're just going to double Chris Jones every play all day long. And, your left guard's going to get tired. Okay. But everybody else has to be able to beat their one-on-ones. Mike Dan, I thought, is always productive, but hasn't hit his stride yet. In upcoming games against Bills, Bengals, etc., they need to step forward. So what do you want to see happen on the front in particular? And do you agree that, Chris has just got to keep eating those doubles?
I'd like to see Chris get after a little bit more. His quote unquote double team win rate this season's gone down a little bit. I think he's the 3rd highest double player in the NFL, specifically in the interior position. Double teams on the outside are more difficult to kind of count because so many different things can happen. Even on the inside, they really can. So I think he's going to have to kick it up a little bit down the stretch here, but I think Chris is very live to do so. He likes to he kind of accepted that closer position last season. He really took it over, and he was on a tear last year, just continuing to get after quarterbacks. And I think he can do that again. And going down the stretch here, we're in the latter part of the season already. Can't believe that is already here. The Chiefs don't play it. They don't play this week, or they will next week, and that's going to be fun against the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think that this is a game where he has to. He didn't sack Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl. Nobody did. No, not nobody. he was sacked, but it wasn't Chris Jones. I think this is a game where you'd like to see Chris Jones get back to on the sack train coming out of the bye. You're going to have some matchups on the interior that are going to favor you, whether it's Tyler Steen playing at the guard position. We don't really know how that's going to shake out yet, but he's a handful. So I personally would like to see Chris. Yes, he's going to get doubled and slid protection to a lot more, but I think it's time for him to ramp up and start winning more of these double teams and forcing offensive lines to allocate even more resources to his help.
I'd hope so as well. I want to see them use the interior blitz, or at least the sugar aspect of it. Bring whoever's in there, whether it's, I'd like to see Leo inside a little bit and just come down in that A gap, because what I'd like to see is Chris lined up either outside the guard or heads up at the most interior, because I want to leave Jason Kelce nothing to do. Yeah. I want to let him say, oh, is this linebacker coming or isn't he? And really try to pseudo blitz enough to keep him occupied without actually making him engage and bring somebody from somewhere else. I think that's probably part of the game plan, but we're gonna get to that game plan next Friday. It all depends on the athleticism, and your willingness to use that. And I think Spags has really shown that very well this season. So I don't have a lot of criticism for where the defense needs to go, other than to buckle down and stay sound.
Yeah, they have to keep it going. Like, don't let the bye week get in the way of what you've done and how you prepare. Don't let it get you off the rails, because they're one of the best defenses in the NFL right now. And what Spags is doing and getting his guys out there. And the fact that, they don't have Nick Bolton, and some of you out there don't think that Nick Bolton plays a large part in this defense. Well, I can tell you very much that he does. And you don't really see them mugging up Drew Tranquill the same way that they just throw Nick Bolton down there and say, hey, I don't really care if you know that I'm coming. I'm going to beat you anyway, because that's how fast he is. And you don't really see them do that with Drew Tranquill. So he does change their blitz metric a little bit. And when you can do that and then still blitz off the slot, that's when you get really, really, really dangerous. That's because, again, you're sliding protection. You're forcing them to think about, who do I have to block now? This linebacker's coming. How do we slide protection? And then, oh, there's a slot corner coming off unblocked. How is that going to be impacted as well? So what Spags has done has been, the Athletic Football Show calls him the blitzing ninja. I think that's fantastic. And it's really shows you what Steve Spagnuolo has done this year, because he's had to blitz out of necessity the last couple of seasons before they started this youth movement. This year, it's because he can. He can. It's not because he has to, because he doesn't have to, but he can. And that's been the difference, I think, between the previous defenses and now. Is the reason this one is so great is because he blitzes because he can, not because he has to, because there are liabilities elsewhere. There aren't a ton. They're blitzing and they're still not allowing deep shots down the field. So don't let the bye week to get in the way of how you've handled it so far. Continue to improve. And all of these guys are finding their way right now, these younger players. And actually, no, there is one thing that I need to see. I need to see Jalen Watson and Josh Williams, somebody take up and step up, because they have not been very good this season. They really haven't. They haven't taken that step forward. So use this time to get in the film room and see what you're doing wrong, how you can get better and help this defense be even better. Because if you can not let a quarterback go after you and be the liability in that situation going forward, that's a true complete defense.
Yeah. And it keeps everyone guessing, including the opposing quarterback.
Yeah.
I'm with you there. We're going to revisit more specifics about the Eagles coming up next week. And we're going to forego questions today, folks. Don't worry. Be with us on Sunday night. We'll start looking at what happened with the games. Monday night, absolutely every question will get answered. But I want to take this opportunity to switch over, because when we don't have a Chiefs game, we can take a look. And this is the best first look at the upcoming draft class. And we all know that there's things that the Chiefs need to fix. If you haven't been over on 33 yet, this is what's going on over there. You've got my stuff, Dan's stuff. Billy Rossetti's writing a ton for us. Brandon Olson's bringing all the college look ahead. And we're looking at not just the draft itself, but what's going on, who's performing in college football, and who's stepping up towards, hey, I need to be in this draft class. You need to have me on your radar. This is team building. Where it begins is right about now. So you can see here on the front page, my latest on the performance metrics is the quarterback class, just to give you guys a little preview. This is on the paid side, but you can see who's putting out and how they're getting to their rankings in the algorithm that breaks down all the performances together. Bo Nix, Michael Penix, two guys with an X in their names. It's pretty rare for a draft class. They're both going to be in there, though, and you can see who and where is doing what. Wins aren't just wins, because J.J. McCarthy isn't asked to do as much as, say, Shedeur Sanders is. A lot of that is coming about where those guys make their druthers. And obviously, everybody wants to talk about Caleb Williams. I've got a great piece over there. So consider going and checking out what's going on at NFL 33. But I want to start looking, because I'm going to update this next week after this game. But the one place that the Chiefs do still have some need, it's not a quarterback, but at edge. And at edge, keep an eye out, because we talked last offseason about how do you get things going? How could the future of this defense look? Is there going to be more 3-4? Is it going to be more stand-up linebackers? Is it going to be just a position on the defensive front? Well, a lot of these guys can do a number of different things that fit into that. So I'm going to be following up next week on especially the trio at UCLA. You have Leotu Latu and you have the Murphy twins. They are playing Arizona State this weekend. And that's going to be a pretty good test. Arizona State gave Washington a run for its money. Washington, obviously, the highest ranked team in the Pac-12 right now that's going to be out there. But you see, you have an outside linebacker from Florida in Princely that's up there. You have these outside linebacker types. They can put their hand in the dirt, but it's very much a year, in my opinion, so far in terms of production that's slanted towards the outside linebacker and away from the defensive end types in terms of body mass. And that's something I think that we have to keep an eye on for Steve Spagnuolo as well, because he can move things around. I know Joe Cullen's going to be in his ear, but as I said here in last piece, the size does matter, and you can see where it's all going. So there's some small school guys. There's a couple of local guys that are in the mix as well. You can get all this information and more over on NFL 33. And I'm not the only one putting out content. I think you guys are going to dig some of the stuff, the commentary on Ryan Poles, what the class. Just want to go have a celebratory look. Come over here and take a look at these three. I don't know if you're going to get any happier about what the debacle is going on with McMinney out on his tail again. But if you do want to get into that, that's where you can get to. So anybody that you're looking forward to this weekend on the Draft Network, draft scene, my friend?
So I just did a little film review of Malik Neighbors, his game against Alabama on Twitter. You guys can go check that out if you want to. I want to see how he's going to perform against a team like Florida that's going to maybe press him a little bit more, because Alabama didn't do that. Like they didn't press him at all. They played off coverage, and that's what they saw. So I want to see how he answers to that. I'm going to be watching Michigan Penn State. So we're going to have some tackle looks, some offensive line looks, some running back looks, specifically on Michigan side. I don't know if Donovan Edwards is going to be getting to the draft, but you've got Blake Corum, and you've also got J.J. McCarthy in that game. My wife's a Penn State fan, so we're going to sit down and watch that football game. But the defense side of Penn State, there's going to be some players to look at, their offensive line. I'm going to get into more tackle and offensive line stuff as I get deeper into my wide receivers, which I've got about 6 of them done. So this weekend, it's trying to fine tune what I'm going to be kind of tuning into, right? Like right now, I've done more actual scouting on wide receivers than I ever have to this point in the process. So I'm ahead of the game there, which is going to put me ahead of the game later. And I'm going to get into tackles and some defensive prospects, probably looking at corners as well. So it's going to be a fun weekend. I haven't looked at the slate enough as of now, but my eyes will be glued to Michigan Penn State until they pull up by 30 and take them out of the game. So,
well, I'll just give you one. It's a late game on Fox. How does Caleb Williams rebound? I mean, highly emotional ball game last week, put up a lot of points and still lost. First time they've dropped out of the top 25. This is a guy that is looking to be a franchise quarterback at the next level, and has had even at some point this season some druthers about where he and who he wants to play for. That's starting to go out the window if you can't get this ship righted, and they get Oregon now. Bo Nix, if you guys missed the headline on that piece I just showed you, is the best performing quarterback in college football. There is no doubt. It's not really close. And yet he doesn't get the respect. Drake May, Caleb are still way up there. This meeting, I think, is going to be really, really in tune for what the draft starts to look like, because whether it's close, passing yards or whatever, it's going to be about the mistakes made and whether you can lead or not. There's going to be 1,000 scouts at this particular ball game. Pretty much every organization in the NFL. So if you're going to watch one ball game, it's the late one on Fox.
Good. Good. I forgot that game was gone. Like, I knew they were playing each other because I knew that USC had Washington and then Oregon back to back. I knew that's what it was. And I just, spaced on that. So yes, I'll be interested if the same thing happens this week to Caleb Williams. What's the conversation going to be? It should only be that their defense is terrible and Alex Grin should be fired on the bus ride home. That's exactly what it should be, because Caleb Williams has done enough to win the games that they've lost. And their defense has been so awful that he's having to put up 50 plus just to win these games. So
yeah,
we'll see. I'm interested. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
I think the conversation will drift towards a little bit of decision making as well, because there's been enough mistakes that you got to make sure that you're not doing, honestly, what Patrick does and pushing too hard to be Superman. You want to see that come back under control and not put yourself down. I think when it unraveled, when he threw that early pick, was it last week or the week before? You just kind of saw it kind of all filter out. And so how can he rebound in particular and make sure that it's still in the conversation? I'm looking forward to that. The other one that you guys want to check out is probably Georgia and Ole Miss. My guy Jackson Dart is still playing. He's not playing out of this world. He still should go back to college. Jackson, if you're watching, come out, just not this season. It's going to be a good ball game, so check that one out. I think that's 6 in Kansas City over on ESPN. So a little bit of a departure there. We'll talk a little college football from time to time. Obviously, this part of the season is when scouting for the NFL draft really starts to get going. So I thought we'd give you a couple of ideas. Anything that I missed or anything else you want to cover?
I don't think so right now. Like I said, I hadn't even gotten to the slate yet. I've been very busy this week, and obviously now my daughter is waking up from her nap. So I think we got a nice little preview there, and we'll probably definitely, now that we're into November, we'll be talking more about draft stuff. And you guys, especially on the Monday Q&As, you feel free to ask questions about the draft, because I've got more eyes on college games now. I have more eyes on tape and things like that. So absolutely use that platform to talk about the draft if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And one last note, Rock Chalk number 16 taking on Texas. So get yourself in front of that one. It's on FS1. It's the early game. Have a good one. Enjoy yourselves. We'll be back with you Sunday night for post-game in the NFL and turning the page to the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll be ready. We hope you will. Have a great